In the Wheatley Institution, we have a scholarly initiative on the family. And it is the goal of our initiative to do consequential, quality, scholarly work that will accomplish the revitalization and the recapture of what we've come to call a culture of marriage. That's a phrase that you'll hear several times today, I'm sure. We want to, in so doing, we will need to revitalize and recapture both the academic discussion and the cultural discourse surrounding three important things: marriage, human sexuality, and children. All three of those scholarly and cultural discourses are important if we're going to revitalize and recapture and create a viable culture of marriage. How these are to be defined and understood as goods in themselves. Each of those areas and the family itself must be defined and understood as a good in itself, not simply a means to other ends. And the family, once marriage, sexuality, and children, and therefore family, are understood as if we're not careful, marriage, sexuality, and children, and therefore family, will be understood as merely instrumental to something else, the goals and purposes of persons, of individuals, and not as goods in themselves. And if they become so only instrumental goods aimed at the accomplishment of something else, it is very difficult to understand marriage, sexuality, and children, and therefore family, in their essential nature that makes the goods associated with them apparent. We have to keep the non-instrumental aspect and understanding of these concepts alive and teach it and motivate people to act for the sake of these goods themselves. They're not instrumental to those goods, but they have within them those goods themselves, and to realize these goods in the context of other public and personal goods. The title of this symposium is simply "Family is Crucial." Notice we didn't say crucial for something or crucial in the interest of something else. That's meant to convey that the conjugal family is a good in itself, not as instrumental for other purposes. The family as a basic fundamental good is not unrelated to other goods, but to understand it as just instrumental, a means of achieving other goods, is to destroy and overlook and obscure and cover over and distort its fundamental nature, by virtue of which it is good in itself. The family as a fundamental good is intrinsically and inextricably tied to our nature as the kinds of beings we are. It's good for us in the sense of being perfective of that nature. Thus, the contemporary social sciences are implicated in the current challenges to marriage culture. They have been largely incapable or uninterested in providing an understanding of our human nature in a way that transcends the status of human as organism. To biological organisms, all goods can only be instrumental. Being locked into the scientism and its intellectual legacy, the contemporary social sciences have failed in some ways to contribute to our understanding of ourselves and our nature and these activities as ends rather than means, lacking significance in themselves. Thus, in the present day, data on the benefits and efficacy of conjugal marriage and family are important and crucial to the support of the family, but lacking a proper understanding of our nature, they will be insufficient. I want to set up the discussion of the establishing a culture, a family culture, by referring to what's sometimes called the tragedy of the commons. You discuss this sometimes in political theory, or the phenomenon of overgrazing the commons. As this country was settled, often we would set aside some common land that could be used for any number of purposes. It was part of the common possession. It was a common good. And what happens sometimes is people will use that common good. You bring your stock there and graze as you need to, and you're grazing the commons. And then what happens is, in the name of or because of self-interest, people begin to destroy or overgraze the commons. That the public good is sacrificed to individualism and individual desires, prejudices, needs, purposes, and so forth. Most people who, for individual purposes, sacrifice or erode a common good do so without really wanting to destroy it. Nobody means to overgraze the commons, but it just happens. There are some people who may want to undo it. There are some people, for example, who want to destabilize the family as it has come through history, or destabilize marriage and sexuality. Some people really do want to do it on purpose for a number of reasons. Most people are not motivated to that end, but it's that phenomenon of overgrazing, if you will, the commons. Fracturing and redefining marriage and family, separating marriage, sexuality, and children by casting all of these things in individual terms has been a problem throughout history. We live in a time, and just in the last few days, when the issue of same-sex marriage has been, in some sense, decided in the courts. Some wondered whether we would go through with this forum, and the answer is, of course we will, because it was never about same-sex marriage. Nobody I know interested in building a culture of marriage and a culture of family is motivated at all by any response to homosexuality. It is a positive affirming of the marriage culture, of human sexuality, marriage, and children that is behind this effort to establish a marriage of culture and a culture of marriage and a culture of family. So this latest entry is same-sex marriage joins a list of abortion, regularly available contraception, no-fault divorce, cohabitation, pornography, a whole list of things that have each taken their own toll, taken their own little bite out of marriage and family. And in that sense, we're in no place different now than we have been in the past, except as things begin to add up, the necessity of the problem becomes larger and perhaps more urgent. One thing that the recent activity in this area has taught me is the absolute necessity of civility. And we want, more than anything, for civility to reign. My experience is that rigorous intellectual understanding, rigorous intellectual preparation are the best guarantors of civility. And that's what we hope will be the spirit of this conference. Let me just conclude by trying to summarize the position of our initiative. The family is the fundamental unit of society because the multi-generational conjugal family is the universal moral crucible of humanity. No other structure or functional organization can adequately replace it. It alone has the inherent natural form and function to provide a crucial and adequate moral opportunity and moral test for everyone. This is the culture of marriage that we must teach, defend, preserve, and protect. It is crucial to the public good it is crucial to the public good, and in this form it is defensible and worthy of our best sustained efforts.